Yeah. Let me know if
Okay.
you can hear them, and I'll mute in between.
Hey, Randy and Mike, if you want to, you could each tilt your camera down just a smidge, less air in the room above your head.
You want me to do the same thing or just leave it alone?
Well, actually, you could tilt down just a tiny bit as well, about half the amount of air between the top of your head and the top of the screen. There's a lot of air over his head right there.
What about now?
Oh, that looks great, Mike.
See, that looks like too much to me, but I don't know that it looks the same to you as it does to me.
You know, it's a matter of I guess taste and in framing, and I could be wrong.
No, agreed. And
Randy, whatever you're doing, it just keeps going back to the same place.
It is dropping back.
Okay.
You.
Pick up my phone, and I have 28 new messages.
Oh my gosh! And we aren't even streaming yet. Are these bill collectors or what?
No, I've hidden my address from them.
Good man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, Randy, about halfway between where you are now and where you were, if you can. I know not all of them are real cooperative. So
I ship CDs for Roger McGuinn and through Amazon, and they have a very strict ship requirement. So I usually get the order in about 10 minutes after the mailman's here.
Oh. I think your teeter-totter is going to keep returning to where it was, right? It's okay. I mean, it's fine. I was just taking a minute to get everybody tweaked. Let's see. We need to go to Facebook and yeah, have it where it was too high. All righty.
Yeah, Randy needs to point his camera up a tiny bit because his head's cut off. And what I'm seeing, is that different from what you're seeing, Kurt? Yeah, very gently. Keep a little more.
Little higher.
A little tiny bit more. From here, guys, don't let me tell you how to do your shot.
You're seeing the same thing.
Oh
no! Apparently his camera is on some kind of teeter-totter. As soon as he gets it that far, it wants to keep going.
What happened?
You can just leave it up high. That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. We're being tweaky because we're all engineers here. Let's see. Yeah, Randy, change it back to where it started originally, and and Suncast can fix it if we have time.
Boom.
All right.
Now that looks good.
Okay.
John, can you control the individual level on these? Volume, audio level? Okay, good. This is the first time I've used this mic on this system. Is this level okay? Okay.
All right, Suncast, I imagine you're going to start streaming soon.
Kirk, when this goes live, will the YouTube channel go live as well?
Yep. There you go. There's the answer. Well, I'm looking for the stream feed. And it looks like I'll have to go look for it specifically. It's not showing up in my feed at the moment. So, get that. There we go. Share this to my feed. All right. Just a reminder to everybody, you do have a mute button. If you mouse around, that pop-up panel will pop up at the bottom, and you can hit the mute if you have to cough or burp or whatever. All right. Share this to. But if you mute, don't do what I do, and that is forget to unmute when it is time for you to talk. So it's better keep it unmuted unless you have to make an untoward noise. righty, let's share this. It's top of the hour. We'll be starting very soon. I just need to finish sharing the program out. A couple more places. Thank you. That's Suncast's way of saying that the tape is to speed. Come on. I think today Facebook has been a little bit touchy. Okay, finally, we are shared everywhere. And as soon as that gets done posting, we'll be ready to go. All right. Let me make sure my Nautel info is ready for me to say something about. All right, where did I put it? How about over there? There we go. Okay. All right, good. It's 4:02. I guess it's time we get started. So I've got my lemonade handy. Actually, I think this may be Monster. Monster Energy. Like I need more energy. Okay. Take a deep breath, Kirk. It's all going to be okay. All right, we'll start this show, episode 688 of This Week in Radio Tech. And we'll start it. Hi, everybody on the network. Glad you're watching live. Sorry about the sausage we were making. Now comes the good part. Here we go. In 3, 2. It's This Week in Radio Tech. Hi, I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us. I'm in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, where it's a beautiful day. It's, I don't know, about, what is this, the second day of spring, 2024? Glad you're here. It's going to be a good show today. Unfortunately, Chris Tarr is not here today, but we have, instead of one guest or two guests, we have 3 guests for you on the show today. So without a lot of further ado, let's jump right in and introduce them. I think Suncast may have a 4-shot ready for, so you can actually see the vast array of guests that we have. Let's start to my I guess it'd be my left, screen right, and that is Jordan Tuck. Hey, Jordan, good to see you. Glad
Hi, everybody.
You join us.
Yep, glad to be here again.
You sound good.
It's just a DBX mic processor. It's all it is.
Yeah. And that mic, is that an RE20 or a 27?
320.
Oh, 320. Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yep.
It's
cheaper, brethren.
A bit less. That's right. All right. And down below me, Brady Bunch style, this is Randy Swaffer. Hey, Randy, glad you could join us.
Good afternoon, Kirk. It's an honor to be on this program.
Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I follow you on Facebook and watch your posts, and you've got something to talk about that I didn't know you did until I was reading some of your posts. And diagonally down there, wait a minute. I guess I got to point that way. There we go. It's Mike Phillips. Hey, Mike, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kirk. It's been quite a while.
It has. It's been way too long. One time you were on the show because we couldn't find anybody. And you
Well, I
jumped right
figured
in.
that was the only reason I was here now. But then I see these smart guys here, so I'm honored.
Well, we got a lot of smart people here on the show. And so on this show, we're going to talk with these 3 guys about the notion of refurbishing older gear. And Randy Swaffer has expertise specifically in refurbishing the Duro DAP audio processors. We're going to talk to Randy about that, but he and Mike Phillips, coordinate on that. Randy says that Mike's taught him a lot. And Mike says that Randy's taught him a few things. So I don't know who's the teacher and who's the student. Maybe they're both. But we're going to talk to both of them about refurbishing older gear, especially these beloved DeRoe DAP 310 audio processors. And then Jordan Tuck is here. And the thing about Jordan is he's like an omni refurbisher. He will refurbish anything that's interesting. And so we're going to talk to whether it's an audio processor or speakers or audio consoles. Jordan loves those. We're going to talk to these guys about those things. We're going to jump into it here in just a minute. I want to first of all give a quick shout out to Nautel. At the NAB that's coming up, Nautel is once again doing the Nautel Users Group meeting. And it's a little bit different. Every year, Nautel hosts this pre-NAB radio technology forum for their own customers, for colleagues, and for friends. So even if you're not a customer, you can come to this. They say, please join us at our 2024 event and listen to notable industry speakers and Nautel personnel as they delve into topics related to broadcast transmission, best practices, challenges, and technology trends. And afterward, you can enjoy networking with your peers during a really delightful lunch. It's a must-attend industry event, and it is free. It's open to anyone passionate about radio transmission. Admittance qualifies for a half credit towards SPE recertification in Category H. Now, how do you get involved with the NUG, the Nautel Users Group at NAB, this technology forum? Well, you go to their website and sign up at nautel.com/NAB/NUG-registrations. That's a lot to remember. We'll put that link in the show notes, but you can just go to nautel.com, and I think you can probably find your way there. The NUG meeting is Sunday, April 14th. That's the same day that the NAB Expo floor does open, and they realize that they're both happening at the same time. The whole thing goes from 8:30 a.m. until 1 p.m., including lunch. It's at the Flamingo Las Vegas in the Scenic and Twilight ballrooms. It takes 2 ballrooms to hold all you guys. There's an industry briefing breakfast at 8:30 to 9:30. The full session is 8:30 to 1. And then there's an optional afternoon session, if you want to go to that, about HD Radio 101 and their advanced user interface. Check it out at nautel.com and register yourself for the NUG at NAB. A lot of folks go there. I will be there for a little short time. I got to speak there a year or so ago. And anyway, good folks there. Thanks a lot, Nautel, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Okay, we're going to jump into this notion of refurbishing gear. Let me ask Mike Phillips first. Mike, about the popularity of the DeRoe DAP 310. This is the classic 3-band audio processor that we've seen so many of. Tell me your thoughts about that processor and why has it been so popular and why refurbish these things?
There, but I mean, it starts with Mike DeRoe invented discriminate audio processing for broadcasting. He's the father of it. There's no question about it. He's my hero. And the reason is because I was in the radio business in 1974, 75 area. I heard WGAR. I said, how do you do this? They told me what it was. I had to have one. I got one. Mike helped me get one. And I mean, it just completely changed everything. The benefit for anyone who does, I mean, most of the people viewing here know exactly what we're talking about, I'm assuming, but for discriminate audio processing, it completely changes everything, because in the old days, when you had the old CBS Volumax, Audimax limiters, whatever you had, the broadband limiter compressor, then whenever you hear a bass drum really loud, then all of a sudden, every time the bass drum hits, the cymbals disappear. And of course, with the discriminate audio processor, the low band, the mid band, and the high band all attack and release at different times in different ways. And so you get to hear the entire broadband of music, and it's a complete change. Why DeRoe? He was first. The devices still work. I mean, there have been certainly more sophisticated units that came out shortly thereafter, and like people say, they obsoleted the DAP. Well, that's not my experience. I mean, as Randy will tell you, the people who love them, and the people who hate them, they can have other things. It's a free world out there, but they were well done, well designed. They're with some exceptions, they're pretty easy to refurbish. It's not real expensive to refurbish one, considering how much they cost brand new, and they can be made to sound just like new. So there's no reason for them to go away. I mean, I've done enough to keep them around for quite a while.
Interesting. And I want to come back to you in a minute, Mike, and ask you about some of the more typical things that do go wrong. Randy, you've refurbished a number of these DAP 310s, and you've been in radio, but you also have another career or a couple careers going on. And I really enjoy the fact that you tune pianos. That's one of the things that you do. Even old timey church pianos that haven't been tuned in maybe a decade or more. You'll jump right in and tune these things up. Tell me about your experience with the DAP 310 and why you think it sounds good, and what's your interest in these processors?
I got exposed to the DAP 310 at WEEN here in Lafayette in the summer of '76. They replaced an aging tube type Collins limiter that had been put in the station when it went on the air on November 5th, 1958. And it was just amazing to me. Of course, I was a youngster, and I just grew to love them out of that. And just like what Mike said, the way they would keep that bass from knocking a hole in it with a violin or cymbals. And it just amazed me. And I started reading and studying everything that Mike DeRose said, and the videos, and it's just amazing to me, the product that he made. And Mike told me a while back in communication he had 4 of them, so I decided I needed at least 4 of them.
Is it true that if you wanted to do stereo, you would have 2 of the DAP 310s, right?
I have 2 in my recording studio hooked up right now doing just that. You set them up and balance them, then use that stereo 5-pin DIN plug, and I've been doing that this week and playing music through it. It's wonderful.
Mike, is it important to somehow tie them together if they're operating in stereo on the same program material, but different left and right channels?
Is it important? It depends on what your objective is. If you're sitting in the living room listening to it for fun, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But if you're in broadcasting and you're dealing with modulation levels, I think it's probably very important. And the good news is that even though that DIN plug is a little hard to find, you can find them. It's not expensive. All it really is doing is connecting 4 wires from one unit to the next, which is ground in the 3 compressor expanders. So whenever you get action on one channel, it simulates it on the other channel. So again, using our example, let's say you got a badly mixed record that has all the bass drum in the right channel, and that bass drum is going to have some effect on even the mid band, because it's only 3 dB, 6 dB voltage per octave between the channels, single pole filters on the equalizer card. And so they call it ping ponging. What happens is that you get this reaction to compression on one side, and like if you're listening with headphones and you don't have this corresponding reaction from from tying them together, then it kind of feels like your head is ping ponging with these two different reactions. So if a professional radio station operation like that definitely should have them tied together.
Mike, like I said, I want to jump back to you in a second and hear what you think are some of the most common problems. Jordan Tuck is with us. Jordan, you, as I mentioned, you're kind of an equal opportunity refurbisher. You've refurbished a lot of things. Has a DAP 310 been in your experience?
Nope. I've never seen one. Not in person.
Oh my gosh.
Not when I was at Mike's shop. Most of the time we saw Orban stuff at Mike's. So I've never seen one in person.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Randy and Mike, we're gonna have to buy Jordan a drink here. She's 21 now, so
he's done things I will never be able to touch.
It's amazing what Jordan does.
Yeah. So Jordan, tell us a bit more about the kinds of what's the oldest kind of audio processor that you've worked on?
The Max Brothers, probably. Recapped and rebuilt a set of those for a friend.
Yeah.
He uses them in a studio just for an effect. It's not for broadcast use at this point, but he would smash drum tracks and stuff through it. It's a very fun effect. That's probably the oldest processor that I've dealt with. Were a pair of it was the solid state ones.
So And then of the more modern processors, I know, I mean, I say more modern. I mean, there's plenty of Orb and Optimons that are old. I mean, that are 40 years old now, right?
Yeah, still in use most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
There's a few stations around
Jordan,
here still using 8100s.
Oh yeah, sure. Jordan brought us a bunch of pictures we're going to start looking at in a few minutes. Let's run back to Mike and Randy. Mike, what do you find with a piece of equipment as old as a Duro DAP 310, which may in fact be, what, 50 years old
Easily.
when you find these things? Yeah.
Well, easily.
What are the most...
No, I was just going to say, I get some in sometimes that are older than I knew that he was even making them back then. Mike and Kay, two of the nicest people I've ever met. I'm sure you would agree with that, Kirk. You've met them, and Randy as well.
Yes.
They have been supportive of what I've tried to do, because when I first started doing it, I'm wondering, does he have a repair business? Am I hurting his business? No, they've been very supportive. They've provided me with things at no charge, and if they provide me with something at no charge, and I have to put it in the customer's unit, I don't charge the customer for it. So I pass that goodwill along, and I think they appreciate that. But what was the question?
Oh yeah, the most if you get a DAP 310, yeah, most common issues. What's first thing is, well, it's going to need this, it's going to need that, and then we'll see what's wrong with it.
Well, and that's right. I mean, and I start immediately. Always replace every electrolytic capacitor in it. There's no question about it. And I would say 90% of the ones I replace are good, but some of them have the caps that are blown out of the end of them just because of their age, even on the bypass caps on each individual card. The most problematic issue with a DAP is the edge card connectors where the cards plug into the chassis. And just over the years, those connectors, which is just the fingers on the PC cards that are tin plated, I guess the connectors lose their springiness, and so you have to go in and clean them up. And for some reason, a lot of people have taken soldering irons and built solder up on top of those pins to make them make better connection with those connectors built into the motherboard. And I clean all that off, take it all off. I use a case of Cramelin on each one of them to try to get them as clean as I can. And I think for the most part, they work okay. And I've told Randy, I said, Randy, these things are 50 years old. If you have a problem, try shaking this card, turn the power off, and work it a few times. That's definitely the problem. There are people who are, and as you're showing on the screen now, that is the equalizer card. In fact, that's one I've rebuilt because I'm kind of a stickler on sticking to the way Mike Duro designed it, because he got it right. And even though, for example, if you look on the left side, these power supply bypass capacitors, they're 250 microfarad capacitors. That's not even a standard value anymore. You could put 1,000 there, you could put 200, it would be fine. But I'm just kind of a stick in the milk, and I put back the value that was there. I don't want anything to change. I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to change anything. But if you look on the far left side, you see where it plugs into the PC edge card plugs into the connector on the motherboard, and those pins they build up a lot of oxidation on the solder. And so I clean them up and recommend how to keep them clean. And as a general rule, I have really good results with them. Also, looking at that card, you will see the rectangular film capacitor. They never go bad. I've never found one. I check them, they never go bad. The red capacitors are film bypass capacitors. They never go bad. But I don't want to talk too much, but I want to point out something on this picture that's up on the screen. You look at the resistors there, those green resistors, and those are mil spec resistors. Mike Duro would source parts from quite a few places. I mean, I think they only made, the last number I heard is about 10,000 of these. It may be 20, it may be 5, but a lot of times when you see them, the parts are different, and that's because he would obviously shop around at various suppliers and get the best parts he could. But many times the parts far exceed the requirement for the design. I mean, those things just last forever. The other problem you will see is there will often be problems with, you have to find somewhere. When they're shipped to me, I tell people to be very careful to support the meters, because if the bezels break, they're going to be broken. You have very limited success putting those back together. I have run into bad op amps, and a lot of times I'll get a board in where, probably one of the biggest problems is where people have modified them and they're convinced that they've got the best solution and the best answer. And I disagree. So I always put them back to stock. In fact, if somebody asked me to modify one, I probably wouldn't do it. So those are the main things I run. I guess without a doubt, the number one problem is alignment. The alignment, if you know how to do it, it's like brain surgery. If you know how to do it, it's not tough, but you need to have done it before. You need to understand it. You need to have a distortion analyzer, and then they can really sound amazing.
Does the manual for the DAP 310, does it tell you how to do the alignment, or is this something that has to be passed on from one engineer to another?
No, it does. And in fact, strangely enough, the last manual that was on the TWiRT.com website, which at this point in time, Randy, I believe is down, the schematic the manual that has the schematics was not complete. So I ultimately put together a complete high quality scan of a manual. And who is it that's posting schematics? Harold Halikanen, is that his last name? Somebody somewhere. They're out there, but there's some high quality schematics, and it does go into that.
Gotcha. Randy, how about you? If you get a DAP 310, you take a look at it. The electrical capacitors, that makes sense because heat and time are not their friends. They're going to dry out over time, and they may explode in other ways. What interesting things have you had to replace on a DAP 310, Randy?
I can do simple things and do the op amps and testing and resistance measurements. And quite frankly, if it gets too far, I've sent several things to Mike, and I've private messaged him in the middle of the night about questions. The alignment, I think, is very important. Sometimes they're just not, and the bias seemingly is off of that FET, and it's got to be set right in order to sound right, and that's the problem I see a lot of times is the alignment. And what people do sometimes is, I use the term, when they hot rod those things, and I don't know about that. I'd rather they be stock type items myself.
Yeah, I understand that. Before we take a next break, let me ask, are the meters backlit on a proper DAP 310?
Sort of. There's some lamps in the bottom of the unit that actually reflect light into them. And those bulbs are now between 50 cents and $1 a piece. I mean, that's not an insignificant cost when you're looking at the number of parts that have to be replaced. But so yes and no. They don't have lamps built into the meters, but they are backlit.
Now, Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like on some of your projects, haven't you replaced incandescent lamps with LEDs that look really good? Am I remembering that right, Jordan?
Yes, absolutely. What I'll end up doing a lot of times is I'll go and I'll take these automotive 12-volt LED replacement lamps, and I'll take those apart. And usually they're built into little sections where there's like 3 LED dyes per board. And then I'll substitute that for the actual incandescent lamp. I did that on the console I'm looking at here. Of course, with a dropping resistor. Yeah, the color temp is perfect for something like that.
Interesting.
So it's like some off-the-shelf like LED replacement lamp, like Batteries and Bulbs, the store. It's pretty awesome. I need to do that to these back here. These backlights on these Duros are burned out. So
okay.
One of those times I'll get it.
And I'm sure we could have a discussion as to whether, do you replace them with the proper incandescent lamp, or is an LED replacement, if it looks, the same or really close to the same? I've seen LED replacements that look just terrible, but I'm sure if Jordan found something that works well, then it works well. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. It's This Week in Radio Tech. We're talking to Randy, Mike, and Jordan about refurbishing gear. And we got a lot of pictures to come from stuff that Jordan's been working on, including a transmitter, a really ugly tube. Something terrible has gone wrong there, and an audio console. We're talking with them about the DAP 310 from Duro and some other projects. I'm Kirk Harnack. Our show is brought to you in part by Broadcast Bionics. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
And as you know, you can get these different components of the Bionic Studio separately. You can just get what you need, what you want, what's right for your broadcast facility. Broadcast Bionics, I mean, the software and systems they make help you make much better radio, much better content and social media content without really doing anything different than what you're doing now. You just capture what you're doing now. Thanks a lot, Broadcast Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack, along here with Randy Swaffer, Mike Phillips, and Jordan Tuck. And we're talking about refurbishing stuff. I tell you what, why don't we take a break from the DAP and move over to some of the stuff that Jordan's working on. All of us, Randy and Mike, you're welcome to ask questions and comment as we move along. Suncast has some photos ready to show. I'm sure they're in no particular. What this must be getting it somewhere. Jordan, what's going on here, man?
So I had just picked up this console, and all I had was my convertible Beetle. And, you know, most people would take a truck to pick up equipment, but not me, apparently. And so that was you could see I'm very in-depth in thought right there. I'm wondering how I'm going to get that to fit in the back seat there. And that was the day I was picking up this board, and we were just trying to figure out how to make it work. We put the power supply in the trunk and the console in the back seat, and then I took it to work and started the repair process. This one came from WTSQ here in Charleston. It's a low power FM, kind of like a public radio freeform station. It's a fun station to listen to. So it has an interesting history. But yeah, the guy's reaction, they're like, "Hey, where's your truck?" And I'm like, I pulled the top down, and they're like, "You're kidding me, right?" And I didn't know this picture was taken of me until like months later. They sent it to me, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, this is what that situation looked like." And no, I didn't scratch my interior either. I was very careful. That board barely fits. I think it had an inch to spare laying down from the wall to the left side and to the right. It was impressive that it would fit.
Now, I'm sure that Randy and Mike and myself, Jordan, you may be too young. We had those little games that you played as a kid, the little thing where you put the square peg in the square hole and the round peg in the round hole and the star shape.
No, I did that.
Did you not do that?
Of course.
Oh, you did?
This was just that on an industrial scale, or Tetris even.
And excuse me for not knowing. I don't know all my competitors' consoles. Which console is that one?
That is a Wheatstone. It's an A6000, and I think they produced that from the mid 90s to the early 2000s. There's not very many of them in existence. I would say less than 10.
Actually, I put in a giant one of those in a recording studio in Lexington, Kentucky. It's actually a studio where William Shatner recorded a lot of the dialogue for Rescue 911 back in the day. So yeah, I put one in just like that. Maybe it's as big as you could buy. Cool. Okay.
That's really cool.
Let's move on to the next picture here, Mr. Suncast. Oh, here we go. Changing gears altogether. A transmitter.
Yep. So that's our 816. That's a Continental transmitter. And that we have, of course, several of these transmitters in our company. This one is in the building with the studios. And that was right after I had repaired the plate blocker capped on ring around the output tube.
Oh, yeah.
It took a direct lightning hit and it destroyed that capped on ring material. And I've seen them get like pinholes and, cracks before, but this one looked almost shattered, and I think I'd sent a couple pictures of what that looked like.
There might be a picture of that tube with the brown looking plastic ring.
There's like it's like a maroon brown insulating material. Yep,
yeah,
that's what it looks like.
That's not pretty. It's not supposed to look like that.
No, and I can't say I've ever seen one blown up that badly before, but I'm sure people who are tuned in have probably seen that before. But I'm just getting started, so. Yep,
that's ugly.
And, if you held it up to the light, right there in the most black part of it, you could see light through it. And when I took that off, it came off like paint chips, if you will. It was very brittle. And I think I just saw a shot of the power supply to the console for a second.
Yeah, that was the one of the pictures you sent me. That's the power supply for the console that was in your little car.
Yes, that fit in the trunk barely, but that thing's the size of a power amplifier. It's the only console that I've ever had that can trip a breaker. The little workshop area in the back of where I work, there's enough stuff on that breaker already, and I guess I had approached the limit, and I went to turn on this console for the first time, and everything turned off. So that was fun trying to figure that out. I thought something was wrong with it, but nope. It's just got, I think there's 8 10,000 microfarad filter caps in the power supply, and it's a huge inrush current.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's the room I'm in right now.
Wow. Oh, this is where you are now. Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
Of course.
So, Jordan, how long did it take you to tune that transmitter once you got the Kapton replaced?
Not long, maybe 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, it literally was right up and running right after that. I did have to move the shelf inside the tube cavity, so that took a little bit of trial and error, but it was the first time that I've had to do that solo, and I was very happy with the turnout. I turned it on, it fired right back up, but it was a very intense thunderstorm when that occurred. We actually had significant amounts of water coming down inside the chimney as well, so that's been remedied and fixed, but that was a storm and a half.
The reason I ask is that I had a Continental FM transmitter about 100 years ago that it got pinholes in the Kapton, and I'm an AM guy, so I didn't know much about it. And I was luckily enough that I was able to get up with Dave Chenoweth at Continental. Do you remember Dave, Kurt?
Yes, absolutely. Sure.
I mean, this guy's a genius on transmitters, and it literally took 6 hours to get the plates in tune. And I called him after about 4 hours and said, Dave, either you're lying to me or I'm stupid. And he said, no, Mike, I've had your call many, 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 many times. And on that transmitter, you just have to slide the shelf and then test it, slide the shelf and test it, slide the shelf.
That's exactly what I had to do.
Unbelievable. It took me 6 hours.
Wow.
I've had to remember to take a little Sharpie or something and mark the line where all the the plates and stuff are, and then when I have to move that tuning shelf, I try to put it back as closely as possible, and that most of the time that works well enough.
It wouldn't hurt to take a second and explain, because there are probably some people watching who don't know what Kapton is or why this brown maroon looking stuff is there. And Kapton is an insulator. It's a really powerful insulator. It's thin, and so it lets you build essentially a capacitor that blocks that allows RF energy to pass while it blocks DC voltage. So you've got an arrangement in these high power tube type FM transmitters where a wire comes down through a chimney stack, and this wire has a very high voltage on it, maybe in the range of 5,000 to 12,000 volts, providing the supply power for the tube. And so this wire comes down and attaches to the top of the tube, and that's fine. Now the tube is able to be energized with a lot of plate voltage or B plus voltage in the tube. And then, however, the tube's going to amplify an RF radio frequency signal coming into it, either through the filament structure or through the grid structure. And we want to extract that RF power, but that has to go to a place that doesn't want the high voltage. So we have to really tightly couple the output circuit that wants the RF to go, but not let that 10,000 or so volts from the power supply go in that same circuit. And so the Kapton is used to wrap between two pieces of metal that are round. So you get a couple of rings of metal, and it's used between these two. And one of the rings comes right in contact with the tube. Then you have the Kapton, and then the outer conductor of this is what goes and takes the RF away. So it doesn't have the DC on it, but it has the high potential RF. Well, the Kapton, some companies have used Teflon, a sheet of Teflon that's wrapped around a couple times, but Kapton, I guess, does a better job. It may be more robust and puts up and can create a better capacitor than perhaps Teflon can. So there's a couple ways to do it. Some, at smaller power levels, I've seen them use doorknob capacitors instead of a wrapped, made capacitor around the tube. So that's what Kapton is. The problem is when it breaks down, if the electrician decides I'm going through anyway, it's gonna, muscle through that defensive line of Kapton. Then the Kapton is pretty well screwed. And it's if there's a hole punctured in it, the electricity is going to find a way through that hole over and over again, and then it's not gonna be pretty. How'd I do? Am I a good teacher? Did I teach about Kapton?
Glad you cleared that up.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. I've had to replace a lot of it. Maybe sometimes because I didn't do such a good job wrapping it in the first place.
Yeah.
All right, Jordan, we got to. Let's tell you what. We're gonna take our next break. When we get back, we'll have more discussion on the DAP 310, also the DAP 610. I got introduced to that along with Sam Phillips and his radio stations, but I never had to work on the DAP 310 or 610. So this is going to be pretty interesting to hear about that, and we'll have more pictures from Jordan Tuck as well. This Week in Radio Tech comes to you weekly, and we enjoy bringing it to you. And it's brought to you in part by Broadcasters General Store. And BGS represents just about every line of broadcast equipment you can find. One of those is Henry Engineering. Now, Hank Landsberg is the proprietor there at Henry Engineering. He designs everything there, and a couple things he's farmed out, some good designs too that he's farmed out. One of those things, though, is the back UPS. And now this is not an entirely unique product category. You can buy devices that do the same thing from other companies, especially from the UPS companies. This one, though, is really designed, I think, for the way broadcasters like to work. And it comes to you from Hank Landsberg at Henry Engineering. So you know it's well built inside. Now, this isn't meant to run just tons and tons of gear. It's got a 15 amp limit. So you just want to run a few devices off of this. And I use the back UPS at one of my own stations. I need to get it actually for a couple more. I think I said that last time I talked about it. What it is, it's this automatic switchover, really fast switchover. It's got two power inputs. One of them would be from your UPS system that provides, battery backed up power. The other plug that you put power into it is coming from just your normal power line, your normal shore power or commercial power, as you might call it. And what this does, normally the power comes from your UPS, and that's fine. But what happens when you need to take the UPS down? Or what if the UPS does something stupid? And I've had a couple UPSs do stupid things, like not come back online when they should. And so it's nice to have the ability for this thing to switch you over instantly over to the commercial power input line. That way your gear can keep working. Now, if you're like me, hey, maybe you have some gear that has two power supplies, and that's great. One of the power supplies you plug into a power strip that comes from the UPS. And the other power supply, you plug into a strip that just comes from the commercial power, or maybe a second UPS. That's up to you. But there's some gear that's pretty important to your operation that may not have two power supplies. So what do you do about those? Well, I have a bunch of those, some workstations, some on-air stuff, an EAS gear. I have an Omnia 11 that only has one power supply. And so what I do is I plug them into a power strip that's powered by the back UPS from Henry Engineering. And then it's got two power inputs. So, hey, my UPS can die. I can change the batteries in it. I can fiddle around on the front panel and not worry I'm going to cut everything off. Because even if I do cut the UPS off, that Henry Engineering snaps right over and provides me with shore power. Also, it has a time delay for returning back to UPS power, to make sure your shore power is going to hang on for a little while before you switch back over. So you can get the back UPS from Henry Engineering. You can get it from Broadcaster's General Store. And I tell you, these are great people. You want to buy your gear from them. They have sharp pencils, as I always say. They carry lots of different gear, stuff from my employer, Telos Alliance, of course, and lots of other things too. Oh, there'll be the NAB, as the sign on the screen says right now. You can register to get in. I think they probably have some free passes to the show expo floor. BGS website is bgs.cc. The phone number is 352-622-7700. Thanks a lot, BGS, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack here, along with Jordan Tuck, Mike Phillips, and Randy Swaffer. And let's jump back into the DAP 310 category before we jump back into Jordan Tuck's doings. So the 310, is it true that Mike Durow would demo these out of the trunk of his car? He'd drive around with a bunch of them in the trunk and take them to radio stations. Here, try my audio processor. Is that right?
I think Randy's talked to him more about that than I have.
Randy, what's your story? What do you know about this topic?
He did that. He was not able, apparently, to get a big market company to work with him on that. So him and Kay would put a half a dozen of them on the kitchen table, build them a line, and he'd take his, I believe it said, his hat in his hand, his coat, and take off across the country marketing these things.
I guess he'd put them in the air chain, let people hear how they sound, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I want to ask the question while it's on my mind, and you gentlemen are here. It seemed to me that Mike was not a big fan of asymmetrical modulation, from what I read. And he says here in this booklet that though your transmitter may be capable of 125% modulation, it's important the difference between the negative and positive peaks be no more than 1 dB apart for better fidelity and substantially lower intermodulation distortion. This means even though the modulation meter will indicate less than 125 in positive peaks, the consistent density from the processor allows greater RMS levels. The station I was at when I was a kid was a Collins 20 V2, and it wasn't capable of 125% modulation. And I guess my question to you gentlemen is this, based on what he said, if you set the negative peaks at 95 and the positive at 105, etc. But today with the stuff, especially the things Jordan fools with and these DSP and all these modern processors, is that true anymore?
Good question.
As far as sound quality issues.
I don't know. Mike, you have an opinion on that?
Well, I mean, if you create asymmetrical, what Mike says is true, but you got to remember, Mike is a recording engineer. He is all about fidelity. He's not about squeezing the maximum modulation. You said 95 and 105. It's really 99.9999 and 119.99 or 125. I forget what it is. I mean, it's just gone insane. So, and read in some of the mailing lists and things that we're on, and as a general rule right now, radio sounds terrible. But there's this programmer group mentality, group think that if you're half a dB lower than your competitor, you're not going to have any listeners. So we've got to squeeze every little thing out of it. Randy and I have had this discussion many, many times. Why this, why that? Well, I keep going back to Mike Durow was a recording engineer. He's got some very good credits under his name. But having said that, I totally agree with the first DAP that I had. I actually sent Suncast a picture of it. I don't know whether he can pull that up, the one that had the 4 blocks on it, the 2 red blocks on it. But when we put it in and look at the modulation monitor, it looks terrible. I mean, it looks like, oh, this thing can't be happening. But DeRoe would always say, but you're worried more about density. The loudness is in the density, not in the peak amplitude. And my experience backs up what he says. Now, I mean, Bob Orban, I've met him a few times. I like him. He's a good guy. He's a brilliant engineer, but he disagreed. He says that you've got to have the peak. So he would squeeze, cut, and clip and get it all in there. A DAP 310 is not a good unit if you are insistent upon having absolute maximum peaks. But I would always challenge you, listen to it on a stereo system, actually tune it in and get it tuned up, and you'll see at least what Mike's point is. I can't disagree with him at all. You see at the top of the picture now that's on the screen, the DAP 310 is up at the top. There was a picture I sent, I don't know whether you got it, that actually showed the DAP. I have the actual DAP that I had. There's the 610. So anyway,
you sent it to me. I didn't see it to forward to Suncast.
Okay.
I'm
That's
sorry.
good.
I'll forward the Suncast, and he'll get it pretty soon.
Not a big deal. I was curious that what happened is the radio station that we owned, we sold it in '84, and ultimately, see Randy's 610 there, and so we sold it, and then ultimately they gave me the DAP. They said, we don't need this anymore. So I actually have the one that I got directly from Mike DeRoe in 1974, 75, 76, whatever the year was. And pretty much it hasn't been touched. It's still stock, but I learned some tricks for it. But as far as, by the way, it's not just Randy.
Look at that. Oh my goodness.
This one is special. This is the only DAP of any kind I've never been able to fully repair. So, yeah, it's got a problem. It's got some digital noise feeding through the analog side of things, and I just haven't figured it out yet. I've got some things to try. I just haven't gotten back to it yet.
Gotcha.
But so anyway, the sound is unique. It was designed to fit a specific purpose. It did it well. And I will tell you that I was in the radio business for 22 years. There you go.
There you go. Picture. Nice. Thank you, Suncast.
Yeah, the one down at the bottom is the actual one I got from Mike DeRoe. That was ultimately the one that our radio station and we at one point were recognized by Broadcasting Magazine as the best sounding small market radio station in the country. How they knew that, I don't know. People would stop by the radio station and say, how do you make this little piece of junk radio station sound like this? And I always told them the truth. I said, you start at the microphone, you clean everything up, you get a DeRoe discriminant audio processor, you tune it up properly and set it up and go. It's really not hard. It just takes a lot of work. So anyway, those are some of the ones that I've repaired and so forth. 4 of them are mine, but the rest of them were customer repairs. But so anyway, I've only, in my history of the time I was in the radio business, I have only called 2 radio stations and said, would you tell me what you're doing for audio processing? And both of them told me. The first one was WGAR in Cleveland. You may have met Robert Raymount, who's passed away now. But he was very helpful. He said, yep, DeRoe audio processor. I said, you make changes to it? Yeah, we made some, we changed a few values here and there. And I have those values from that unit. And I tried them and didn't work for us, but it worked for his transmitter amazingly well. I could talk for an hour on that. And the other was an FM station in Washington, D.C. It was WPGC. He said, well, we just got a pair of DAPs. And I said, that's all I need to know. So Mike DeRoe got it right.
My goodness. It just occurred to me that my introduction to DAPs was at a couple of stations that Sam Phillips, the guy who discovered Elvis, the guy who started Sun Recording Studio and Phillips Recording Service, that he owned some radio stations in Memphis, and I did some engineering just after he sold them. So I didn't work for Sam at that station, although I did build a station for him. But Sam had DAP 310s. We had two different AM transmitters, one for day, one for night, at different locations, actually. And then we had a couple of DAP 610s on the FM, which was an easy listening station. So I wonder if you might spend a minute to tell me about the DAP 610. It had to be a big technology jump from the 310. I got to play with it some. I actually, the first time I saw Sam Phillips, he I don't know why he mounted them down low in the rack. He was laying on his tummy. I think he probably had a vodka handy, and he was twiddling with the knobs on the 610. That thing is huge, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's still in a 19-inch rack, but it's a two rack unit. But it's got a lot of parts in it, and unfortunately, there is a serious problem with the 610. And I just offer this warning for anyone who decides, for example, if they want to ship it a refurbished one. You won't be able to see it on the video, but I'll try to turn it around a little bit. Randy's well familiar with what I'm getting ready to talk about. If you look at the bracket here that holds everything together, this bracket is plastic. That plastic is brittle. These standoffs for the circuit board are actually part of this plastic faceplate. And when you ship these, if they're not properly packaged, these pieces will break. I have no way to put them back together. I've patched a few back together. These things, I guarantee you, I've never made any money fixing one of them, but I've spent hours and hours going through the book, and I think I've got a pretty good handle on them now. I've fixed quite a few of them. By the way, if anybody has one in the rack and they want to take a look at it, and when they plug it in, if it blows the fuse, then the problem is shorted tantalum capacitors on the circuit boards, the bypass gaps. They short and they will take it out. But they sound great. I mean, they sound terrific, and they can be repaired, but they have to be very, very well repaired. I don't have a standard price list. I guess it depends on what it takes. I don't charge enough. But you posted, Suncast posted my website, dap310.com. Like anything else, you can't plan ahead. I call it dap310.com, and then all of a sudden, now we got to deal with DAP 610s. So if you need anything there, you can post comments there and ask questions. There are a couple of guys, Jeff and Bob Hoffman. I mean, there's some people who participate there. And I also have information there on 610s, some of the parts for which are becoming unobtainium. But I love them, and I do it for fun. I think I charge a reasonable price for it. Randy's never complained, so I'm going to keep doing it. By the way, in terms of refurbishing old equipment, I have started something in the last couple of years ago. I'm now refurbishing tube type amplifiers for Leslie's that work with Hammond organs.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Oh yeah, and I'm swamped.
Wow. Yeah. Go ahead, Randy.
The 610, from what I've read and what I've heard, never achieved the popularity of the 310. I think about 3,000 were produced. And it has been stated that a lot of engineers thought the 610 at that time, the 80s, was not aggressive enough.
Ah, okay.
And you'd have to change the firmware to do anything about that.
Ah, okay. So it was it digitally controlled, or was it? What was the basis of its operation?
It's not. It's digitally controlled analog. Mm-hmm. It has I'm not sure in a short period of time how to describe it, but the analog path is really pretty pure, which is important. It doesn't digitize the audio to process the audio. It processes the audio based on the audio being digitized and analyzed. Jordan, you might have a better explanation for that than I do.
I think your explanation's pretty on point, actually. It kind of reminds me of the audio prisms. I think are kind of the same way. But yeah, your explanation is better than what I would have said.
Yeah.
And if I recall, the early Frank Foti processors were that way. They kept the audio as analog, but they had digital control signals that would tell the different bands and the overall limiter what to do.
Here's a little tidbit, Kirk. It might be interesting. There was a Pam's of Dallas Jingle Company produced a jingle package called Series 49. And for all their packages, they produced a jingle demo. If you can find that, there is actually a music cut on it, Wayward Son by Kansas, that was processed through a DAP 610. Chief engineer at Pam's and I were best friends, and Mike DeRoe, he loved Mike DeRoe's stuff too, and they sent us one, and we used it to process that audio. A lot of the jingle package would have been processed through it, but Bill Meeks came in and said, nope. So we just did the demo with it.
Interesting. That brings up an interesting question, because Mike DeRoe had an interest in recording studio technology. Several of us do here as well. Is multiband audio processing used very much in the mixing or mastering process?
I don't know how to answer that question. I know that a lot of engineers are not in favor of multiband processing because they have control over the individual item. You don't need, the bass guitar has its own track, the bass drum has its own track. So you're not going to typically going to do multiband on the individual tracks. And as far as whether in mastering, whether it's being used in mastering, I don't know. I will tell you that there is a really nice multiband processor in Adobe Audition. And it's being used a lot more than people will admit.
Okay. Interesting. Hey, tell you what, I see that we're running short on time. Let's jump into a couple more pictures we haven't seen yet from Jordan Tuck's collection. Let's see, Suncast, if you got, who's this and what's he doing?
That is Mike Erickson. He is, in that picture, he is playing music off of my Rivendell computer, and we were adjusting a couple of Vorsys processors. Those are 31-band FM processors. At least the limiter section is 31 bands.
Sure.
The front end is 5 bands. So that's he came over and visited for a day. I finally got to meet him after years of wanting to talk to him and pick his brain about his time at Wheatstone, and it was a fun day. And he got our FM sounding really good.
Yeah, he really knows his stuff when it comes to adjusting these processors.
He does.
Yeah, he's got the best ears I think I've ever found on someone else, if that makes sense. And there's a couple of
I was going to say, Mike Erickson has a high degree of passion and interest. What he develops for people is he's good at understanding what they want to achieve and helping them get there.
Yep, and right there you can see our 2 Vorsys processors. The one on the left is for our top 40 station. He got that sounding really good, and the one he's adjusting in the middle rack there is for a country station. And both of them, I think, just in my opinion, in this area, they're the best sounding stations in the area. Are they the loudest? No, but they're again, I'm not trying to aim for maximum loudness, but just overall sound quality and cleanliness, he achieved it. And very thankful that he took some time to come and visit. It was fun.
Guys, we got to take one more quick break. We're talking to Jordan Tuck, Mike Phillips, and also Randy Swaffer. We're going to have some final words from each of them. And I got to find out a little bit from Randy when we come back about how his career in piano tuning, how that informs his interest in audio processing. That's a very curious thing for me. So we'll be right back. Our show is brought to you in part by Angry Audio. And I've mentioned before these headphone amplifiers that Angry Audio makes. Is the headphone gizmo. Right on their website, it shows the headphone gizmo. I love this thing. And I usually have one as a prop. It's in a suitcase. I haven't taken it back out yet. But I love this headphone gizmo. In fact, I installed one last summer at my new station in Oxford, Mississippi. The headphone gizmo is plenty loud. Oh my goodness, this thing will get up and jam. It has both sizes of headphone outputs. So it's got the 1/8 inch and the 1/4 inch headphone outputs. Of course, the volume control is right there on it. And it can be powered over the Studio Hub connector on the back, which looks like an RJ45, because that's what it is. Or you can power it right there. You can insert power, 16 volts AC, right there on the back of it, as shown. And you can tell it, hey, you're getting powered, from the RJ45 connector with the Studio Hub standard, or hey, you're getting powered by the incoming 16 volts. And then it injects the power onto the audio out connector to go power the next one. So you can power, I believe, up to 3 of these with a 16 volt AC power supply. Anyway, the mounting options are quite cool. You can mount this thing upside down, as shown right there, under the console. I put mine a little farther back than is shown here to keep the people with the chair from, knocking it. So that works out well. And but you can also mount it the other way around on top of the console, on top of the countertop, if you'd like to. So clean. Oh my goodness, this thing is just clean as a whistle. What a great design from Angry Audio. The headphone gizmo, and there's another one. Also, they continue to make the one that Studio Hub made before Angry Audio bought Studio Hub out. And then they also make one called the Guest Gizmo, which also has a mute button on it, as well as a headphone volume control. They're all from Angry Audio. Check them out. The website is angryaudio.com. Love these guys. Thanks for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Our show is also brought to you by Max Connect. And, they do things we've been talking about Max Connect Wireless for years. And lately I've been telling you about the Max Connect U.192. What that is, it's a USB connected sound card, but it's not your ordinary sound card. It actually does do analog and AES EBU in and out, but it also is exactly, perfectly, and properly designed to create a multiplex FM signal. It is it runs at 192 kilohertz sampling rate, but it also has the right electronics design inside to output that kind of actually fragile and very precious MPX signal. If you ever done any research on what it takes to properly amplify, transport, move, receive an analog MPX signal, that you need to treat it with care. Otherwise, your FM stereo will be screwed up. Well, the U192 doesn't screw it up. It's just exactly right. In fact, the Max Connect U192 was actually designed by Angry Audio, and they know what they're doing, both in terms of USB and in terms of high sampling rates and proper inputs and outputs. So if you're using one of these, or you want to use one of these software FM audio processors, like from Stereo Tool or the Omnia SST, or from Breakaway, you can use that one, and even the Omnia 9 software version, you can use that one as well. You can use this USB connected sound card to put out your analog signal to go into your FM exciter or your analog FM STL system. It really is the right way to do it. So check it out at maxconnect.com. I know it's spelled funny, MAXXKONNECT, because, the internet, and all the good names are taken. All the right way spelling they're all taken. Check it out. Thanks a lot, Max Connect, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, just a few minutes left. I'd like to get some, let's say I said I was going to ask Randall Swaffer. Randall, how is it that you tune pianos, and does this apply well to your interest in audio processing?
Yes, I've always been interested in music, and I've sung at church and played the piano at church, sung in a couple of quartets. I got out of a job at the age of 55 that frightened me, and a friend of mine told me, "You've got a real good ear listening. Won't you take up tuning pianos?" He was going to phase out of it. So I started doing that, and I applied myself and learned that A was at 440 hertz and all that technical stuff, and I still do. I really enjoy doing that. I enjoy setting them just right where they need to be to sound right. Sometimes they don't stay where I put them, but I do really enjoy doing that, Kirk. I've got a lot of connections with people and friends. I'm a missionary Baptist preacher, and I preach on Sunday or Sunday night nearly every week, and I've got a lot of church connections too. So people have been good to me, and I just enjoy tuning pianos.
That's awesome. I always like to hear what people are interested on the side, what they do. Jordan, you and I haven't got to talk about if you have any hobbies or things that dovetail well with your interest in broadcast engineering and especially equipment refurbishing. Do you do something else too?
It's pretty much all just what I do at work. I do what I do at work, and it's the same thing at the house, but I love running live sound. I don't know if I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with setting up processing.
Yeah.
I run sound at my church too, and everybody always compliments the way I do things. And I just love audio. I love manipulating it and amplifying it and doing different things to it. So it's a lot of fun. And but as far as hobbies, I mean, you see the room I'm in. This is what I do. So,
yeah, we saw those. We saw those pictures. Those are great. Is that at your home? Is that your home studio?
Yes, this is our spare bedroom.
Oh my! Oh
was
my
a spare
goodness.
bedroom. Now it's a studio.
And we looked at it very briefly, but I understand you have just installed an automation system in that room, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
It's Rivendell 4.1.0.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I've been trying my hand at that with my friend Chris Hicks at the radio station, and it's a lot of fun. It's very customizable, and
sure.
I just like playing with automation and doing little radio shows and stuff that totally aren't being broadcast at all. Promise you that. But it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. It's great that we have this interest. It amazes me, and I guess it kind of makes sense. I mean, I know people who are professional airline pilots, right? They have their air transport pilot certificate. They fly for the airlines, and when they get home, what do? They go get in their little Piper and they fly around some more. Wow.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
And here we are, engineers kind of doing the same thing. Mike Phillips, how about you? What kind of tangential things do you do that inform your love of audio?
Well, that's two different questions. The thing I do most interferes with my love of audio, and that's politics, which is all consuming. But I get, particularly with the rebuilding that I do of the DAPs, the 310s, the 610s, the Leslie amplifiers for Hammond organs, I pretty well get satisfied. I was going to say something earlier just to kind of close it out. At some point you say, it's been a long time. In fact, I even think I was looking at one of Randy's units, and I got the thing tuned up, and I started sitting there playing with it and set up my sound system to listen to it. And I bet I sat there and listened to it for 2 hours. It's just such a sweet sound. So I pretty well got it made. I've got everything I need with regard to audio. Of course, I've got microphones beyond reason. So I play with all sorts of things, but other than that, I tend to do what everybody else needs me to do.
That you bring up a great point. There is a pleasure in hearing audio processed well. And I don't mean processed a lot necessarily, but processed well. And for us engineers, there's a joy in experiencing that.
Exactly.
And sometimes we listen to audio that's not processed and it sounds a little flat. Like, okay, I could pump this up a little bit.
Yeah. I can't listen to the program bus on the board. I've got to listen to it through an air chain.
It's a problem. It's a real problem.
Yes.
Is this a sickness or just something that comes with the job, or are we really right on target? I mean, what about the rest of the population? Do they enjoy listening to well processed audio or not?
Clark, they're listening to MP3s.
Well,
amen.
That's true.
Yes and no. I'd find a lot of people that I talk to about it, they can pick up on the nuances of audio processing. Like if it's more consistent, it's more pleasing to them. Instead of like one song being at one level and then the sweeper comes in and it's super jarring or whatever. And then if you have your processing set up correctly and it's all, one homogenized, good, smooth sound, I think they can pick up on that, whether they know what it is or not. I've talked to a lot of people and I think generally people know what good audio processing is. They just find that there's something about, this TV or radio station that sounds good, I guess. I don't know.
I've
asked my wife a lot of
on the
questions
TV
when I set up
before.
something.
Yeah, sorry. I've actually put a DAP
Really?
on a TV before.
Sure.
I had a compeller on my TV for a while. It was wideband. It wasn't happening for me.
It's funny to go. It's funny to go watch old newsreels from, I don't know, the 70s or early 80s, and they had this wideband just suck up compression on everything on the news. That way nobody had to really, have their hand on the fader controls. It was just, everything was just max loudness all the time, including all the
A
background.
lot of radio stations around here were like that back in the day. I listened to old air checks of radio stations I grew up listening to, and it's probably the Max brothers turned to maximum smoke. So that's probably what it was.
That's actually
around here.
It's interesting because this is William. I guess because this is Randy's favorite question, and that is, where did all the expander cards go for the DAPs? There's so many of these units that the expander cards are missing. I'm thinking about making one to fit them because a lot of people took the expander cards out of them, and I think that's about 40% of the magic in the doggone things.
Wow! Oh my goodness!
I just bought one like that.
Wow!
I need to find one of those processors.
Guys, I'm afraid we're out of time. I see that Suncast has put me on full screen and taken away the 4-shot, and that means Kirk, it's time to go. We need to do this again sometime. This is fun. It's interesting. It's a real joy to talk to engineers about audio processing, and especially the older stuff that we all remember. Except you, Jordan. You're too young.
I still enjoy it when I see it and hear it.
That's true. That's true. You do. You have come right along with us old guys. Thank you. That's good. That's a good deal.
Now, Kirk, let's be fair. For people who don't know Jordan, this guy has accomplished an extreme amount in the years that he's been doing this stuff. There's stuff that he can teach all of us.
That is true. Thank you for pointing that out.
Amazing.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Thank you for the kind words. It means a lot. It really does.
Well, we'd love to have you all back, but right now we got to go. So I appreciate it. Randy Swaffer's been with us, and also Mike Phillips and Jordan Tuck. We appreciate each and every one of you, and you watching and listening. We appreciate you as well. Thanks for joining us here on This Week in Radio Tech, and a big thanks to Suncast, quick on the controls to get some pictures on the air, even things we hit them with at the last second. So I appreciate that very much. Tell your friends about This Week in Radio Tech. If you're watching us on whether it's Facebook or YouTube, please, like and subscribe. That way you'll be notified when a new one comes along. We do the show live, typically on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then we typically republish the show the next day, with a proper top and tail on it for permanent sitting on the internet. Hey, I've got a cool thing to do tomorrow. I'm going to go visit a transmitter site in Huntsville, Alabama, and talk to some engineers about a brand new transmitter that they've installed in Huntsville, and they're going to get some good advice and take a little tour about that. We'll bring that to you on an upcoming tour. Thanks again for being with us. We'll see you next time on This Week in